Hey there, and welcome back to another My Hero Academia Vigilantes review. And today we're going to be talking about the latest episode to drop, Makoto/Truth, which last week I expected would introduce what would likely be a romantic interest for Koichi. I know the story's also pushing him and Popstep as some sort of thing, with their whole connection from the river. The fact is, she's like 14 or 15 when they become friends, whilst he's in college, and so it makes it feel massively sketchy. I think I'd prefer if it just remained a one-sided crush, otherwise it will absolutely tank my care for his character. It's just nasty. I know there's probably defenders out there, but it's just not my cup of tea. Enough of being sidetracked by skeevy ships though, let's jump into the episode. The episode begins following Koichi as he has the Peter Parker experience, living his life as a secret vigilante at nighttime, leaving him exhausted during the day, whilst also trying to juggle having a time-consuming day job, as well as trying to complete his college degree. Of course, it's all a struggle to keep up with, and so he finds himself sleeping through lectures and trying to cram during his lunch break. Here is where we meet Makoto, and she's presented as everything that Koichi's not. Confident and self-assured, popular and charismatic. Meanwhile, Koichi's Koichi, which is to say, a mess. He's still known as the campus creeper, he's a loner with no friends, and now very obviously is struggling with his hero sociology class. Thus, Makoto offers him a deal. She's going to help guide him through the class, and in exchange, he'll have to help her with something. And so from this scene, immediately I got the vibe these characters have a lot of chemistry, and I already prefer the dynamic to him and Popstep. The light teasing and flirtatious vibe's just more compelling than somebody yelling at him every moment. I get that some people find that type of trope and dynamic funny, but it's just not for me. And along with the age gap, it completely turns me off. We then come to the intro theme, and when we return, it's to see Pop already chilling in Koichi's house, just hanging out in the dark when she hears a noise. She hears Makoto laughing at the idea that Koichi was swindled into living here by the promise of a penthouse apartment, which of course turned out to be a shipping container looking box on top of a ruined building. And I'll be honest, it is kind of funny. I imagine it would have to be dirt cheap though, right? Of course, Pop panics seeing a girl come into the house and so rushes to grab her stuff and hide, just before Koichi unlocks the house and enters alone so he has a chance to clean stuff up. It's a good thing he does so too, because not only is his vigilante costume out in plain sight, but Pop has trashed his house, and so's Knuckle Duster. Man, I sometimes struggle to find this dude compelling at times, but I can't deny I'm constantly feeling sorry for him too. I would cry if somebody was always entering my house and leaving it a mess, whilst I don't even know where they live, and thus have no chance of them hosting. It's not like he can revoke the idea of shared space either, considering Knuckle Duster has previously smashed a window to let himself in before. And that was before they even really knew each other. He stalked him to his house. I will say though, that whilst it's one of those things that I would personally find nightmarish, I do find it very funny happening to somebody else. I love that he's at the point of acceptance where now he just goes along with it no matter how bad it is, and is just slightly disappointed by the mess. In Makoto goes, and whilst Popstep glares from behind the curtain, she goes into a pretty long-winded exposition dump about the history of heroes and vigilantes, and how the modern system that we know was formed. I will admit that it was a little bit interesting to hear about some of this stuff, like how early vigilantes were in Rhode Island, and very obvious references to Batman and Robin when you see their pictures. I will say I really enjoyed the more Western comic book style they took on for the stills in regards to those Rhode Island heroes. It was a nice touch. And I did read somewhere that apparently they brought in actual comic book artists for that, which if true is pretty awesome if you ask me. I also found it interesting the majority of vigilantes go on to become villains, which according to Makoto is somewhat of a government conspiracy, as by defining what makes a villain and getting the power to punish them for it, they were able to take control over quirks in general, allowing them to limit the freedoms of those they deemed problematic, often for flimsy reasons. Thus, I guess vigilantes rose in popularity once again as a response to this, with people operating outside the law to ensure that the government can't unilaterally control everything with no consequences. And I have to say, it is a fine plot point and I like the world building, but at the same time, it took up so much of the episode and it did feel like it lagged, especially since a fair chunk of the initial information is stuff that we already know from the original story. I think the fact that they went hard on the Justice League references with the original 7 and the Rhode Island thing, which is where the League was originally based in the comics, did help to salvage such a big lore dump, but it was still a bit boring at times. Then it goes from slightly dry to pretty funny, when the exchange that he's already agreed to is revealed to be helping Makoto with field research on the Naruhara Vigilantes, of which he is a member. She wants to study them as by existing, they're almost like a living fossil, a throwback to a different time, and so she thinks it'll be a great anchor for her thesis. She's probably not wrong there, but it was funny to see him flailing and panicking. On one hand, he doesn't want to discourage her from digging deeper because he doesn't want to be discovered, and he also wants to keep her safe. But at the same time, she's already given him all the help he needs, so he can't get out of doing this. Any refusal on his part would be social suicide, considering he's already known as being a potential predator. He does actually want to have friends, and this is his chance. On top of that, it would be suspicious to refuse if you ask me, and he also very clearly has a crush on her based on their interactions, and how he gets all excited to see her again on Saturday. After she leaves, of course, Pop goes full crazed, jealous gremlin and starts shouting about how she's a shameless floozy, etc, etc. The typical type of reaction you'd probably expect here. Okay, so seems they're going full love triangle then. I expect it's going to be a longer term thing, considering Makoto's in the intro, and so she's probably here to stay. And then also because in manga/anime, feels as if relationships progress at a glacial pace. I don't know how long it's going to be until we get some sort of resolution to this, if we even get one at all. I've seen so many anime where at the end, the romantic elements just kind of hang there, unfinished, incomplete. And spoiler alert, I know how the mainline manga ends, and that's definitely a similar concept too. They seem allergic to romance, which makes me question why you'd even include such side plots to begin with, if you never have any sort of intention of following through with it. It's pretty frustrating. We then follow Makoto back to her place where she gets comfortable, taking out her green contact lenses and putting on her glasses, and really just having the same sort of de-transformation that Popstep did when Koichi first met her out of costume. Her brother comes home and is revealed to be the detective from the main show, and who's also appeared a couple of times in this one too. He's honestly never been all that interesting to me, and this scene doesn't really change that. It establishes that he has a very black and white view of hero society and what separates heroes and villains, whilst also doing the same for his sister, who has the opposite opinion. She believes that there's far more of a grey area, and that the law is somewhat arbitrary. Well, at least we won't be running into the roadblock of Koichi romancing a girl that clearly would never approve of his vigilante antics. He's managing to avoid becoming a Peter Parker comic book variant in that regard. Also, whilst I've never really cared about the detective in his previous appearances, I did find this scene fun to watch, if for no other reason than it was funny to see all his warnings to his sister fall on deaf ears, and for her to essentially troll him into submission. Felt very older sibling, younger sibling in its tone, and really helped to establish her character away from the flirtatious vibe she was putting towards Koichi. We cut over to the next day, where Koichi and Knuckle Duster are training together. Really, more than anything, I think this scene's there to showcase that Koichi has been training, and to start to hint that he's going to get more involved in fights going forward. That's probably one of the major things I've noticed in the show. The main protagonist is pretty weak. Most of the fights have been saved by Knuckle Duster before things can get well and truly out of hand, or he's had extreme surprise on his hands. Oh, and then there was that time that Stendhal saved him too. It's probably about time they start to pivot and start to show him getting stronger beyond just dodging and being fast, and I think this is going to be the beginning. Knuckles seems impressed by his new moves, and Pop's still grouchy about how he's spending more time with Makoto, which even Knuckle Duster's apprehensive about, claiming that you need to keep your personal and professional life separate. I wonder if he's speaking from experience here. We haven't actually seen any of his backstory. That's something I'm keen to get into at some point. For me, he's probably the best part of the show, so I hope we see him showcased a little bit more soon. Then it's on to Koichi's meetup with Makoto. Of course, for him, it's love at first sight, again. Although I will say it was nice to have it be more innocent awe rather than being a bit of a creepy pervert moment. Then again, I can't say I've seen many shows where the creepy pervert archetype is the lead character, so maybe there was nothing to worry about in the first place. Also, I found it fun that she clearly acknowledges that he's smitten, and she plays into it. No beating around the bush. I like to see it. Of course, Popstep has also followed them, and she's stalking their date at the same time, which is very normal and not at all unhinged behaviour. I'm expecting there's going to be a lot more of this type of thing going forward. Then it's on to the study. Makoto's found a number of hotspots online where the Naruhara Vigilantes have appeared most often, and so now she wants to see what the people have to say about the Vigilantes and what they do. She thinks that by doing this, she'll be able to prove what it was that divided pro-heroes from villains at the dawn of the era of registered pros. Makoto tells Koichi that in the end, the thing that likely divided the two groups, in her opinion, was simply popularity. The popular vigilantes were embraced by the public, and so they were accepted as heroes by the government, whilst those who were less accepted but still did good work was tossed aside and forgotten, punished for using their powers. You know, from these last couple of scenes that we've had of her, Makoto kind of seems like if Stain was not criminally insane, was not violent, and was also a woman. She clearly thinks that hero society's flawed, that it's become more about popularity than true heroism, and that vigilantes are not inherently villainous. As we see in the main show, if you have a flashy, exciting quirk or a distinctive look, you're going to be more popular overall and go farther as a hero. I'm just once again glad to see they're not going to have her be a secret hater of vigilantes and the crawler in general. I think it works so much better this way and is more compelling overall. So the pair go off on a journey across Naruhara to see what the reputation of the vigilantes is. In short, people think the crawler's creepy and they universally call him the crueler. They pretty much universally lust after Popstep despite her young age, and then they fear Knuckle Duster, aka Freaky Fist Grandpa. Man, Koichi really can't catch a break, can he? Even when they compliment him in this thing, they claim he's creepy. I guess that's what happens when the majority of your big wins come against villains in isolated areas or dark alleyways at night. People don't know who they're indebted to, and so their reputation isn't exactly going to grow. Plus, there's no propaganda machine to hype them up like they do for the actual licensed pro heroes either. Here we come to some action, where some random penguin guy with a soccer quirk steals Makoto's laptop and does a runner. Koichi and those X-Men middle schoolers go after him, and Koichi gets to try out his new moves after he slips into an alleyway to change into the crawler. Guess he hasn't quite managed to have his big battle moment yet, as this guy dodges all his attacks and then one-shots him with a soccer ball to the face. Ouch. And Koichi's just not having a good day. Meanwhile, it's Cyclops and Wolverine, the miners, that actually take this guy down and beat him up. Koichi just catches the laptop, and then he changes back to normal before giving it back to Makoto. Not a triumphant day for the Crawler. I hope that changes soon. Dude gets chumped out so often. He really does need a big win before the end of the season. I know you need to progress things slowly, but he can't even win against F-tier villains like the Soccer Penguin. Villains that little schoolboys can take down. It's not a great look. Makoto and Koichi then head their separate ways, but not before she uses her lie detector quirk to ask him whether he's the Crawler, which of course he says no to, since he is in fact the Crawler. I actually thought this was a really clever twist that throws her off the scent, and yet it doesn't make her look stupid. I think it's good writing that ties a long-running joke into the major events and character dynamics, and I really loved it. We then finish with Pop, Koichi, and Makoto all separately complaining about the data they collected, before we get the preview of next week, where we get to meet an American hero named Captain Celebrity. Hopefully this one doesn't get killed off in 2 episodes, and we get a bit more information about how the American Hero Society functions. We also get to see Koichi be jealous of this guy flirting with Makoto, which should be interesting to see. So with all that being said, that's the end of the episode, and these have all been my opinions, and I'd like to hear yours. What did you think of the episode? Did you like it? Hate it? I'm curious for your thoughts, so make sure to like, comment, and subscribe, and let me know.